on my mind.
Somebody in a parachute has just landed on the edge of the ring. Holyfield bit by a dirty Mike Tyson.
Hello and welcome back to The Boxing Show with me, your host, Rob Tebber. As always, like to remind everybody to please like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on for more boxing content, but a lot to get through this week, and I am joined by my able colleagues, Mr. Barry Jones and Mr. Andy Clark, as we look ahead to 3 bumper cards this weekend. Barry, a lot to get through this week. And we're going to start with, I'll tell you what do you pick where we're going to start?
Okay, I don't care. I don't care. You said bumper cards. I thought you were trying to say bumper clad.
No.
That's just something like to me. What's he doing? Okay.
Anyway, awkward start.
Let's start in Belfast.
Let's start in Belfast. Andy Clark, good idea as Michael Conlan challenges for the IBF featherweight title against Luis Alberto Lopez, somebody we know from his exploits over here before Christmas against Josh Warrington. He had a couple of good wins before then. But yeah, a good fight for the IBF featherweight title this weekend.
Yeah, it is, and it's Belfast fight nights are always great. That place will be packed out. Conlan really pulls a crowd. As soon as that one was announced, I just loved it because I feel like Conlan has got enough to win that fight. I think he's a very mentally strong kind of competitor, Michael, and the defeat against Wood, I think, would have been a difficult one to get over. We discussed it at length before, and he was so nearly there. He didn't really do anything wrong, but he still lost. And you have to be mentally strong to deal with that, because in one way you can say to yourself, okay, fine, well, it's just one of those things. I got caught. Wasn't really too much I could have done about it, and move on. Or that can really haunt you. And you can think to yourself, how can I still lose if I didn't really do anything wrong? It's a double-edged sword, but I think he will be able to handle that. But this is a really good fight because Lopez is one of these guys who his career kind of took off during COVID, didn't it? He had a good win before COVID, kind of late 2019, and then he emerged in the bubble with Top Rank summer 2020, and they put him in with Andy Vences, and I think at the time Vences was Top Rank's guy, but he'd had a loss and a defeat in his last few fights, so they did something that they generally do really well, Top Rank, which is put someone into a real tough match to see whether they've got anything left, and if they win then they'll stay on the roster, and if they lose then they're gone. And Lopez beat him. And then he beat Gabe Flores, and that was the one that we've spoken about before, wasn't it? That became quite uncomfortable
Gabe
viewing.
Flores Senior left his son in there to take a beating.
Yeah. And then he came over here and put Isaac Lowe away, and then Warrington. So you look at that and you think, it's just a good story, isn't it? It's a good story. You see someone given an opportunity and they've taken it with both hands again and again and again. So absolutely, this is not going to be easy, and I think it will be a good fight. But I fancy Conlan to deliver. And Belfast is such a great boxing city, but it's kind of always needed a leader. And he is that bloke at the minute, but if he can get a world title, then that just kind of brings that greater cachet with it. Because, Frampton was the man for a while, wasn't he? Ryan Burnett never quite had the same popularity, and unfortunately his days at the top were short-lived due to injury. But I feel like, Conlan is the next one on that conveyor belt. If he can become a world champion, then I think he can bring some really big nights back to Belfast. Not just for him, but for everybody. He'd be, rising tides lifts all ships and all of that. And for that reason, I would love to see him win.
Barry, we've spoke about Lopez and Conlan a few times on the podcast, certainly since the fight was kind of discussed. You've always leaned towards Conlan in the fight. You like the fight for Michael Conlan?
Yeah, well, I think we talked about him and Lara, I think, was originally, and I said he beat Lara. But Lopez is a different problem for him. I think it's a harder fight for him, actually. I think Lara's a better fight than Lopez, I feel. But I think stylistically, you just got to watch he don't get caught. That's all. But I thought he could box rings around Lara. But Lopez is erratic, and that's harder to read. And especially when he jumps in with that left hook, that's a difficult task for everybody. I think that the problem with Conlan is that wide stance he has, that booth type stance, is to generate power, be more explosive with your work, and it works. But when you're not a natural puncher, it can have an adverse effect, because Groves, what's the other fellow he had? Hey, that's the one. I knew who he was. No, they risked those later rounds to be more explosive because they had power. So it's worth the risk. That, if you don't get him out there early, you might be tired in the end, but you've either done enough damage that he slowed him down, or you've knocked him out cold. That's how it is. Conlan don't quite have that, and I think that was what happened in the Wood fight. Wood was tremendously tough, obviously, Leigh Wood, but Conlan was boxing rings around him, but again, the energy drained and he was exhausted. So that shot that he got caught with was a great shot, but it was half to do with him being just absolutely knackered as well. Let's not forget that. So he has to manage that differently, I think. But I do think that the way Conlan, again, he did, not like Lomachenko, but the same, when he moves his feet, his body goes up and down, Conlan. So that'll help negate that awkward left hook that Lopez throws. He'll keep changing the levels of his height, feinting all the time. Southpaw with a southpaw jab, darting in and out the distance. I think he wins because of that. I think with Lopez, the reason he has so much success with not so much Isaac Lowe, but certainly with Warrington, because Warrington's right in front of you, which can be intimidating. But when you're a fighter like him who fights in bursts and really awkward angles, you've got a guy who's square in front of you. You've got the target to hit every time. You know you're going to hit when you throw. So you just throw with everything you got. When you've got someone like Conlan who's changing the levels of his height, all constantly feinting, stepping this way, stepping that way, with that front foot goes in two directions with Conlan. And that's that great amateur pedigree. That's why Lomachenko does it so well, differently, but so well. They move the feet in different directions, the front foot constantly. So you're not sure whether they're going to attack you here, they're going to attack you on the outside or the inside. And Conlan does that really good. I think that'll play a real problem there for Lopez, I feel. So I think I'm big for Conlan. I think he'll be world champion on Saturday night.
You mentioned there about Conlan as a southpaw. He's a switch hitter. I think out of the kind of the modern era, I think he does it just as well as kind of most.
But I think southpaw suits him for this.
I was going to say, do you think
that's why that? Sorry, in my head he's southpaw
all the time. Why does that give him the advantage as opposed to potentially being an orthodox?
I think you tend to think you go orthodox and the guy who jumps in with the left hook, because then you got longer to travel. But also, I think for someone like Lopez, the way he throws his left hook from an angle from down to up, when you're orthodox, when you're straight like that, you got this you think you could block it, but he throws it through here. You got a tunnel to throw it through. But if you fight a southpaw, you got to throw it. You don't throw over the top with that left hook, Lopez. You throw it through the middle. So when you go southpaw, your hands here, it blocks that gap straight away, or it takes you to tuck up like this. And also, when you get your foot on the outside, he's got to change the angle of his left hook. You got to throw around. You got to start getting his body off balance, twisting and turning different, or stepping further, and then he's squared up for your shots. So I think Conlan boxing southpaw, not always, but mainly southpaw for this fight will work for him. That's what I feel.
Andy, we kind of spoke about it a few weeks back with Robeisy Ramirez, who's of course now the WBO champion. It's kind of a new era really for the featherweights nowadays. Not that he was kind of a dominant champion, but the kind of the post Gary Russell era of the featherweight division. I think now we've got belts kind of scattered across here and there, and as good a time as any for Conlan to get hold of a title in that weight class and get some of those marquee fights that are out there for him.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's been a little bit frustrating for him since the defeat to Wood, but I think the rebuild has been sensible. Mariaga and Guerfi, he hasn't hung around. He's taken those fights relatively quickly. I mean, he got back in August, didn't he, after a fight in March, and then one towards the tail end of last year, and this is what he's been waiting for now. And I feel like this is his time. And, you know, with the ability that he's got, it was always going to be a relatively slow build, I felt, with him as a pro. Top Rank signed him and they've had that patience with him. You know, that's what they do. They know how to move fighters. But with all that experience, amateur and pro, I feel like he will win this fight, and I feel like he can go on and certainly box in those unifications and maybe even win them, because why not? As you say, when you look at the competition out there, it's good, but at the same time, Ramirez was a terrific amateur and it is a favourite of mine, but Conlan did a lot as an amateur as well. We were denied seeing what would have happened in the Olympics if he hadn't had that decision go against him in the quarterfinals against Nikitin, but I'd be hopeful we get to see it in the pros.
Barry, where does Conlan need to... I mean, you mentioned there about, you know, tiring towards the end of the fight. We actually had him in the studio probably a month ago, and he said that, you know, people talk about my gas tank, but what they don't sort of seem to realise is the first 3 or 4 rounds there, I'm loading up, I'm throwing big shots because he had Wood hurt and he's trying to put him away.
Yeah.
So he's kind of talking about sort of the punch count as opposed to going and doing the rounds. Doesn't look as though, at least, we've not really seen anything from Luis Alberto Lopez, certainly recently, that suggests that Conlan's going to find himself in a similar position whereby he's hurt and kind of there to be taken out. Does he need to learn sort of a pacing issue from the first fight? Is that what he needs to address here?
I think so. It's just, again, it goes back to that wide stance. It's brilliant because it can make you explosive. Your movements are faster, but you're constantly engaged with your legs. You're bent down, you're sat down with your punches. And I think, what's that?
That's Andy Clark's
It's my phone. Shall I go put it on silent?
Sorry, yeah, if you can, don't worry. But anyway, Barry can carry on.
It's a better podcast now, isn't it?
I'm not sure how long a podcast with just me and you would last.
It's me ringing him.
There he goes.
But I do think, you know, when you have your legs so wide like that, it takes a lot of energy because you're on a wide stance. You're always engaged. So that drains. So it's using all the big muscles, your backside and your legs. So that drains your energy, and that's what it is. He trains that. He probably got a great tank, but that's going to drain your energy. And if you're loading up in shots, when you're loading up with shots, that's going to drain it as well. So I think you just learn how your body works, and you have to adapt to that. Obviously, all trainers don't train the same, fighters the same way, but they have a similar pattern how they train fighters because they have a system that I think works. And Booth is that because it's worked for him. Why wouldn't he keep doing that? But it just needs to be a little bit of an adjustment. He
kind of had that period of time, didn't he? He turned over as a pro with Manny Robles, was based out in America,
Yeah.
and he kind of, by his own admission, sort of started off as like a sort of little Mexican having wars in the gym. And the first probably half a dozen, I can't remember when he left and went over to Adam Booth. The first half a dozen or so fights that he'd had, Andy, it was kind of... You mentioned his amateur career and how he boxed as an amateur. He wasn't unrecognisable, but it was a very different style that we saw from him in the early stages of his career.
Yeah, I never felt like that spell with Manny Robles was a mistake necessarily. I think it was a different experience for him. I think he would have learnt a lot, but I do feel like signing for an overseas promoter, albeit one that has had British fighters, has other British fighters, and one that absolutely knows what they're doing, I think you need to you certainly need to be boxing at home. His debut was amazing, Madison Square Garden, the smaller room, but even so, 5,000 people in there. St. Patrick's Day, it was everything that you could possibly want it to be if you're Conlan. But I just think early in a career, being around and about where people kind of can see you and know you best is better. But Manny Robles is a good trainer, so I'm sure he picked up plenty from it. But I was pleased when it came to an end, and I think he just fitted in really, really well with the other fighters, with Harlem Eubank, with Josh Kelly, with some of the other guys they've got down there now. Kurt Walker, I think's down there, and a couple of others. And I go down there every now and again, and yeah, he's one of these people who very much knows his own business, the Michael Conlan business. He's leading that kind of entity, that company, quite literally. I mean, it's Conlan Boxing, isn't it? So they've got a very good handle on what it is that they want to do. And boxing in Belfast is what he is what he should be doing, and that's what he has been doing the last few years.
And it would be a massive win. You mentioned earlier about kind of for Belfast boxing and taking those big nights over there. You really need it from a British boxing perspective. You really look for those big nights over there in Belfast, don't you?
Yeah, you absolutely do. I was at Falls Park for his fight against TJ Dehenny, and it was absolutely tremendous. There were some issues because the weather wasn't great, and any outdoor fight in kind of like the north of England or Northern Ireland any time of year is a bit of a gamble. But the ring walk was absolutely extraordinary, and the whole occasion was tremendous. It wasn't the first time he'd done it. He'd done it at least once before, maybe twice before. And I think the reason they didn't do it last year was because I think that the money that they were asked for increased to a point where it just didn't really add up. But the support you get there is amazing. It's one of my favourite places to go, and you've always got a lot of good ticket sellers to be able to pack out any card. That will just never change. That will always be the same, and you'll have enough of them who are good to watch. So I think it's really important for UK boxing that Belfast remains vibrant and somewhere where major promoters go, because they haven't really gone there that much in recent times. At Sky, we had a bit of a spell going there with Burnett, Unified, but that was back in 2017. I'm not sure they've been there since, off the top of my head.
Sky?
Yeah, I don't think so.
BT, if you front the fights out.
Yeah, BT have.
Sky
BT have.
I don't think, no. Was that the Zaki Arnov fight?
Yeah, Lee Haskins and then Jackie Arnov. I'm biased. I've got a soft spot with Belfast and Northern Ireland. My mum's from Northern Ireland, and my relatives talk to me about boxing quite a lot when I see them, and they're always asking, when are you next coming over here? I just think like a buoyant boxing Belfast scene. Not that it's ever anything other than that, but it being a go-to venue and city for promoters, I think is important.
As we've started on Lopez versus Conlan, obviously in the featherweight division, we're going to go to Wood Lara. Well, Lara Wood 2 next, because I think there's going to be certainly some crossover in the second part of this bit that we talk about with the featherweight division. Barry, it will be 14 weeks to the day since the first bout between Mauricio Lara and Leigh Wood, where we saw Mauricio Lara uncork that left hook that won in the WBA featherweight title. Is that enough time, do you think, in between?
Yes, I do. He was boxing well, Wood. I think, at the time we sort of go, he was boxing so well, and he was. But when I look back, there was loads of warning signs as well from Lara, as early as the second round, to be honest, that he was finding a home. But I thought the way Wood was boxing with the feints, really, really snappy with the jab, stepping behind it. He was doing all the right things, boxing really well. Just when you're up against someone like Lara, once you just slow down for just a half a second, just slow down just a little bit, not even enough to almost notice, he doesn't slow down. He carries that power from the first to the last, and we've seen it with other fights, and so he's always a danger. You just can't switch off for a second, and that's all it takes. So I can see why Wood wants to fight again. I think it's a bit of a foolish move in general, actually, to be honest. I thought it was a foolish move taking the fight in the first place. I don't know if you could avoid it. I can't say that in the same vein, say I want to see the best fight the best, and then say why would you fight him? But if there's an option to go somewhere else, you could go somewhere else. I think that's the truth of it.
There was a big thing made out of it, wasn't it? I mean, Leigh Wood even said in the face-off where he said, tell him I picked him, tell him I chose him.
Yeah, it was mad. But I thought, I thought Lara was going to win the first fight. I thought Wood was going to go at him, try and knock him out. I thought, he's confident he has the power, he's just going to go for it. I thought that's just really ballsy move, but I thought it's going to be just going to end in only one way, getting cleaned out. But he surprised us all with how intelligent he boxed. I think he boxed really well. Again, those little feints, and he was up and down with his feet, as well, with his height, as well, and he was jobbing to the body really well, and and those are feints, and stepping in behind the jab, and it was all good work. But he got wobbled. He got just stiffened his legs a little bit in the second round. Got caught with a good shot, but in that sixth round, he's boxing quite well. He got caught a few times, and then obviously it was the seventh round, wasn't it? A stoppage, and then the seventh round, then once he got hurt, he was done. I think all that controversy about throwing a towel in too early, it was the right move. I said it on the night. There was nothing wrong with that stop. Ben Davison did everything right. Because 10 seconds, I didn't know it was 10 seconds, but I found it was 10 seconds, and Ben was gutted, bless him. He was so upset. I didn't know it was 10 seconds. And I said to him, this is in the corridor. I said, listen, mate, you've made the right choice. I didn't know it was 10 seconds. I mean, it's irrelevant. 10 seconds, you can throw 12 real powerful, take your time, have a look at the target shots in 10 seconds, at least, minimum. No.
I just felt
people
like...
don't realise how long 10 seconds is for punches. I could throw, now, this age and this fitness and all that, I could throw 50, 60 punches in 10 seconds. They'd all be like this, but I could do that. So imagine you're a guy who's fit, ready, and slow that down with power. I know you got a guy who's like this, wobbling.
I think it would have just taken one.
Yeah.
Lara was on top of him, wasn't he?
But he won't. But he doesn't need to throw one. Yeah. By the way, he's only that far away. And the referee's there. He's right behind
out
the
the
referee.
neutral corner. He was ready. He was like watching something from back in the bare knuckle days almost.
Yeah, he's getting cleaned out. But unfortunately, I can't say anything but the same thing happening again.
You mentioned earlier there, Barry, about kind of you expected Leigh Wood to press the fight in the first fight. We just went to the gym with Leigh Wood and Ben Davison last week, and Ben Davison said that, and Leigh Wood said that, I thought he was going to come at me, and I thought I was going to kind of have to, react a little bit more to what Lara was doing. He said that as the fight kind of progressed, he felt like, okay, I'm having success here. I can force the fight, I can push the fight, and then of course what happened in the 7th round happened. How does he go about it this time? Do you think he kind of looks at that and thinks, okay, I need to tighten up what I was doing and maybe just stay responsible? If nothing's happening, that's fine. Or does he look at it and think, look, 12 rounds is too long to go with this kid. I need to get rid of him.
It's one of those, isn't it? Because if you're just too tentative and trying to be clever, and then you get cleaned out in the later rounds, you're gutted because you go, I should have just went for it.
Yeah.
But just going for it, I think, is a foolish move, because the guy, you might be able to punch, but there's a guy there who can punch better than you. That's what it feels like. And he knows he can. I think Lara will come at him now, because Lara knows he can hurt him. I don't think Lara's more intelligent than what we give him credit for, to be fair. But he knows he can clean him out. So he's not going to wait. But he might wait until he tires down a bit, and he waits until you lose concentration. So it's all about, that's what for Leigh Wood, it's about keeping that concentration, not making any mistakes. It's just that simple, really. Easy. But it's not easy, is it? It's difficult. And so what he was doing was right, but you just can't switch off for a second. And you are going to take shots, and when you are going to get wobbled at times, you can't get in there and not take a shot off Lara. It's impossible. But you have to be tight, major tight. And then when you feel you're tiring a little bit, you've got to get beyond the jab and try and refill that tank a little bit before you go again. Yeah, I just think, but the longer you take Lara in, you think that the better chance you got. But you got to be so fit, and training to be reactive to a fighter is a different way to training to be positive. If that makes any sense, or you train to be positive in a fight. If you go to dictate the pace, you train one way, but when you train to be reactive, it's a different fitness altogether. If anything, it's harder fitness. No, I think you have to try and be proactive. But also, you've got to realise that you're going to have a guy at some point, he's going to just start throwing really heavy shots and trying to bully you. And you've got to be tight and reactive to that. And that takes a different fit. And that's where your concentration wanes, because you get hit with the shot. You start thinking about worrying. You forget about what you're meant to be doing and worry about what's coming back your way. And then at some point, you remember you've got to throw shots, and then you don't do it with the same conviction. And then you leave gaps. And that's where you don't panic under pressure. All those things. And that's down to fitness and conditioning for that. So all that's got to be factored into it, I think, how he approaches the fight. But I think it's pretty similar to what he did the last time. I think it was partly working for him, how he boxed the first time.
Andy, we sat and did the preview of Wood Lara, and we kind of both spoke about the fact that, look, Leigh Wood, regardless of how this weekend goes and regardless of what happened a few months ago in Nottingham, he is a massive success story, certainly of recent years in British boxing. Lost for a British title, and then a few fights later he's a world champion. He had that brilliant win over Michael Conlan. With that being said, are you surprised that he's going into the rematch here? Do you share sort of Barry's feelings as to potentially maybe looking elsewhere, or do you think this is kind of like Leigh Wood's looking at it going, probably, I'd imagine he's being well paid for it, it's a chance to become a 2-time world champion, but are you surprised? Would you have maybe recommended a different route to him?
I maybe would have recommended a different route, but I think this was what he was always going to do, because I just think that's who he is, really. And he's come quite late to the top of the sport, to the big time. And he definitely wants to stay there, but I think he wants to make as much money whilst he's there as he can. And he made really good money against Conlan as the defending champion. I think the first fight, it was financially the best one out there for him. And I'd imagine that, as Barry said previously, he'll be getting well paid for this one as well. And he doesn't want this train to come off the tracks. I know it has, but he doesn't want this to end, you know, this peak that he's at, because he probably thought that this wouldn't happen. And that's not indicative of any kind of lack of self-belief, but boxing careers are really weird. And you don't always get what you feel like you should. I mean, that happens to so many people. And this didn't look like it would happen for him. I think mentally this is really tough, though, because like you were just saying there, Barry, the way that he beats Lara is kind of by just boxing the perfect fight and not making any mistakes. And the chances of you being able to do that are just not that good, because he did hit Lara plenty in those first 6 rounds. And every now and again, Lara would look a bit kind of discombobulated or disorganised, or had that bit of a look on his face where he's thinking, this isn't really going according to the script. Why can't he just stand still and let me hit him? But he didn't look in any trouble or hurt at any point. And I think if you're going to beat Lara, you've got to be able to hurt him. Otherwise, he's got 36 minutes to find something, and he's just so confident that he will.
Or confuse him, which is what I thought Conlan, when I mentioned Conlan fighting him, I thought Michael Conlan could confuse him, I think, because he different angles to his movements after he throws the punches, where Wood's not quite that.
Make him miss a lot, you know. But
I feel like even after the Wood fight, you just feel like, I don't know, with Lara is the type of fighter to get, you know, disheartened.
No,
I feel like he would just stay in there.
He can get. I think he'd be frustrated. There's someone who would spin and roll underneath him and move around the target. Even if Conlan can get, not quite Lomachenko, but he can get to the side of you, Conlan, quite well. And that would. But Wood's not that sort of fighter. Wood box really well, I gotta be honest, and showed a better intelligence than I thought he had. But it's still in and out, which is fine. That's good. But it's still relatively straight lines. There's no real massive angles to him, and you are what you are. You know, let's be honest. And also ultimately, Wood, you know, is brave and can get up, but he can be hurt. We've seen that in the past. He can be hurt, and that was the big worry in the first fight for me. There, the fact that he can be hurt. Conlan, who's not a massive puncher, and this, you can always throw the punch of all punches. You aren't going to be a big puncher to knock someone out, but still, recovering from a punch from Michael Conlan is one thing. Recovering from a punch from Lara, which he did get up from, to be fair, because that's the way he is. You know, Leigh Wood is programmed that way. I've said that about Nottingham. I said that after the Conlan fight. The one thing I learned about anything tonight is never start a fight with anyone from Nottingham, because they just get up. I want to batter you. Like, you fight someone like that for us? He just keeps getting up, and he'll do that. But getting up from Conlan is one thing. Getting up from Lara, no, you don't quite recover the same. And yeah, and that's the worry. So I do think, and I hope I'm wrong actually, because it's a great, like I say, it's a great story. It's one of boxing's, it's a typical little come from nowhere, be something story, isn't it? Really, he wasn't going any. He was, winning a British title was his level. That's the truth of it. And he surpassed that. Steve Robinson, he's another Steve Robinson from Cardiff. He well surpassed that and proved he was better than that in the end, given the opportunity. And but sometimes you have to earn an opportunity, and you just don't see it until they get there. And he's one of those. He didn't seem nowhere near world level, and now he's the top of the. And for a little while he was top of the tree. And now, ironically, the way boxing turns out, the guy who he knocked out has a really good chance of winning the world title and being on top of the tree, and he's up against it more than anyone on Saturday night.
Yeah, just touching on a thing that you said a little while ago, I think, and Andy also mentioned it there, about having to box perfect for 36 minutes. And that was kind of my thought going into the first fight, was that like we saw Wood against Kanzu and boxed very well in that fight, and we hadn't really seen an awful lot of Kanzu before or indeed since, but I felt the general feeling was that Wood had boxed a fight that maybe not that we didn't think he was capable of, but certainly boxed to a higher standard than we'd seen him box previously.
No, we didn't think he was capable of it. Let's be honest, we didn't see that. We didn't see he could do that
against Kanzu.
No, he boxed, he was
but
great.
against, I guess the point I'm making is against a guy that we'd known less about than certainly Mauricio Lara going into the first fight. And I kind of looked at the Zoo performance and thought that, okay, if you're going to box like that against Lara, I just didn't know whether or not he had, no disrespect, the boxing ability and the discipline to do that for 12 rounds against somebody who you only need to, we've mentioned it here about making a mistake and getting hit with that left hook. The margins for something like that, we mentioned earlier about Michael Conlan against Leigh Wood, it wasn't a massive error that he made, but it was enough just to give him that little door opening, and then the fight was over. So that's why I asked you about whether or not in the rematch he goes straight to him and tries to get rid of him, thinking that I don't know if I can outbox you for 12 rounds, 3 minutes a round, or does he go, okay, I'm going to be super careful, and where I was getting a little bit confident in round 6 and 7, maybe I just kind of dialed that back in a little bit.
He wasn't getting confident, he was getting tired. See, maybe we see it different ways, but that's interesting.
I'm just going on what he said, but anyway.
Okay, yeah, but he was getting tired. Well, understandably, because I can't keep that concentration levels, it's so intense and under pressure, does tire you out. He was getting tired and he slowed down, and not massively visible, but I was ringside, you could just see it ever so just slow down a little bit. The hands go from here to there. No, and just now that might not happen, but that's I think the little things that happen, they go from there to there, just a little bit more. They here to here. Elbows flare out a little bit more than they should, which brings your arms down. All those things. Your feint's not as sharp as it was. The jab to the body, you just you're in the chest, not the torso. It's just a little bit different. Just a little bit different. Just a little slightly different. All of a sudden, then, but those little adjustments or little changes means when he throws his shot, it lands where it wasn't landing, or it's not blocked. It's half blocked and not fully blocked. Little things like that. There was just a gap, and he threw it. Now Lara's throwing it. Lara don't really look for the perfect shot to throw. He just throws it. He sees your head. Like if you got power, you can't go pinpoint your power. You got power. It's like you don't throw an hand grenade as a little pea hole like that. You just throw it in with all the people out, don't you? I've never thrown one myself. You know what I mean? Like when you got like real destructive power, you're not looking to be precise with it. You just
that's what they always say, don't they? Trainers always say, just make him feel the power.
Yeah.
Hit him on the shoulders, hit him on the chest.
I heard a good phrase regarding this, where I remember a trainer saying to me once when I was doing some very mediocre training of my own, and I was obviously like just trying to throw every punch and land every punch, and he said, they're not heat-seeking missiles. Like, not everything you throw is going to land. Just do it. Just throw punches. And Lara's that guy, isn't he? And like you said there, bit by bit, he'll start to land, even if he's completely missing, and then he just lands slightly. And then it goes from landing slight to kind of half landing. I mean, you just notice that if you're him, don't you? You're locking on bit by bit by bit by bit. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, he's patient, isn't he? Guys like that, those kinds of hunters, they're patient because they know they've got a long time to get it done.
And that was sort of in the first fight. You mentioned that one of the things that we spoke about in the review show for it is there was that photo of Leigh Wood just as the hook lands, where his hand's not quite where it was in the earlier rounds of the fight. And that's what we mentioned there about being patient, because I know we were talking about the Conlan-Lara fight, and it's a different fight to a Wood fight, but you could just see Lara being the type of fighter who would always back himself to eventually land, and eventually he'll land the shot, and eventually you'll feel it.
And sometimes you don't have to hit, like when you have real power that he has, you can hit the glove. You can, and not to make him panic, but you feel that slows you down, that stops you, like hit the chest, stops your movement, stops you for a second, so he can hit you properly. And he might not do that by design, but they just might do that, because if he throws one hook and it hits you, he throws 3 more shots. And also the looping shots, and it was quite evident. The shot that put down, it was from a southpaw stance. The shot that put down Wood against Conlan was a looping shot over the guard. That's what I think I was speaking about back before the first Lara fight. That's the worry, because Lara does loop his shots in, doesn't throw them straight. They are all quite arc. All his punches are quite arc, so they come behind the guard, and that was a worry with Wood, with that real high guard like I used to have, like this. There is a gap here, and also it blocks your vision. You want to be like that. That's the safest place to be. but also it gives you a tunnel vision, and your peripherals and all is great. Having your hands here gives them more exposed, and you don't want to do that, but also you can see things clearer. You're more looser, so you get that balance right. It's what you do. It depends where you are in the ring. It's about knowing where you are all the time in the ring, and great fighters have that. Where when you're close, you're tight. When you're not, when you're in that a jab and a quarter away, if you've got the vision, then you can drop your hands. You can do little feints. You can mess around with your shoulders. You can layer them on to shots, but you got to watch the feet. When they make that movement, you're like that. So sometimes people they think they're in a safe distance, but all it takes is that guy to jump in the distance and he gets you. And if you're just solely thinking about what you're doing, then you'll get caught out sometimes with your hands down and make a mistake. And that's where that mental side, which is so important about boxing, and that's what tires you out, because you've got to be thinking of everything all at once. Boxing's the most simple sport in the world. Just hit the guy more or harder than he hits you, and you'll win the fight. Or the woman, sorry. Just hit the opponent harder or more often than he hit you, and you win the fight. Simple as. But there's so much more involved in it. And what empties your tank, and it's the mental aspect empties your tank more than throwing punches. It really does. The thinking, the constant thinking all the time. What you have to do, what they're doing, make sure you don't get caught, but make sure you're doing work. And you can sometimes just go, it can be too much for you. And you can overthink things. You have to sometimes turn your brain off to go for it. All those things, so you have to get it right. It's dead simple, really. Just don't make any mistakes. And
yeah, I do think with someone like Lara as well, it's probably, maybe it's one of those situations where the tank can empty quick, and I don't mean in a round, but you can be fine for 7 rounds and then all of a sudden you're not, because it just, like Belly fighting Usyk, he had a great first 7 rounds, didn't he? And it was close, but he said, and unbeknownst to us at the time, you might have spotted it, I didn't. He said he was done, and he knew he was, because he was just knackered after 7 rounds of trying to compete with this guy and keep him at bay as he's gradually ramping things up. And it's kind of exhausting watching someone fight Lara if you want them to win, because you know that anything can happen at any second. Yeah,
and that's that. And he's proved he's proved in other fights, not just that fight, that the power stays with him. So, unfortunately for Leigh Wood, I just think it's going to end up the same sort of fight. He's going to be boxing really well. There'll be warning signs early on in the fight as well. I think Lara will start faster this time. No, he knows he can. He always thinks he can hurt everyone, but when you've done it, the confidence you have then. I've done it. I know where the gap is now. I've seen him. I've seen him box a fight that he wasn't meant to box against. That's the important part. If Lara does his homework in the fight he's already been in, rewatches it with his camp, and they said, because Leigh Wood did what we thought he wasn't going to do. We thought he was going to go out there and be physical, more physical. Like, he has power and strength, and try and bully Lara back. And maybe what you should do, put the punch on the back foot. Not the back foot, everything's on the back foot. Put the punch in reverse, so he has got that forward momentum coming at you. Maybe that's the option. Maybe that might be the option. But there's a risk you walk onto a big shot. So I don't know what you do, but it's mad, isn't it? What you do for the best.
It is that type of fight, and I think that
you got to do what you do best.
Yeah.
I think in any fight,
that's all you can do.
Tactics are great, and and they are very important. But their tactics, game plans have to be so fluid. So ultimately, you boiled on a fight to this: what the very best that you do against the very best that he or she does, and if that's ultimately what it will be. All these training camps, you can't change your whole style in 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 13 weeks. You can adapt and do little variants to it, but ultimately your best is your best, and that's and I think ultimately whatever Leigh Wood does to him, Lara will catch him on the button. And I think when he catches him on the button, I think Leigh Wood will unravel, unfortunately. Yeah, I think so. Okay,
well, we'll come back to Lara Wood too when we do our prediction end to the podcast. Before we move on and talk about Chris Billam-Smith versus Lawrence Okolie, where does Josh Warrington sit amongst all of this now at 126 or indeed 130 potentially? Who knows? There's Conlan versus Warrington would seem like a great fight for the fans. And then you've got Wood, Warrington, which has been discussed at length. And again, Nottingham Forest and Leeds, big rivalry there. You'd feel like he kind of sits in quite nicely. Or it's potentially Mauricio Lara trilogy for Josh Warrington. Andy, where do you think we see Warrington next?
I'd like to see Warrington fight Conlan, actually, if
Yeah.
Conlan wins. I like that. It's a matchup that hasn't really been talked about nearly as much as the other two. Wood Warrington, although it hasn't happened, obviously, has been talked about quite a lot. Warrington, Lara. I don't really know. It doesn't really appeal to me all that much, a third fight between those two, to be honest. But I think Conlan against Warrington could be terrific fun. Get that in Belfast. Warrington's supporters all going over there. That could be.
It just seems
that
mad.
could be
though,
wild.
It just seems mad. Why would you? That's the thing. But the problem you got with these, you have 3 ticket sellers. Like, why would you want to take Warrington out of Leeds? Even now, no, it might not be as he might not have that same power that he once had, but he's still going to be a massive draw. So why do you want to take him out of Leeds?
I know, but if you could take it, if you could do Windsor Park, couldn't you, maybe in Belfast, and they travel, those fans, I'm sure.
Yeah.
In a way day. It's not Las Vegas, but it's still.
I think an option for
It'd be great, that.
an option for Warrington is Cordina.
That's what I was thinking about. 130.
Yeah.
Again, you'd fancy Warrington as a former 2-time IBF champion to be well ranked by the IBF if he jumps up to 130.
And he's big enough.
And certainly he's at the stage of his career now. He's been making featherweight for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd be quite grateful for those extra £4. And a good fight as well. I think
It's
a
a
good
good
fight. I think it's a hard fight for Warrington at this stage of his career, particularly based on what we saw from Cordina against Rakimov.
Yeah, he ticked so many boxes in there, Cordina.
Yeah.
And also, it's a fight that sells really well. I mean, I think Cordina would have to go to Leeds, I think, to be honest. I don't see where they could, it'd sell out the arena in Cardiff, but that's only like 5,000, maybe. What's Leeds arena? That's probably the same, isn't it? Maybe less.
Yeah, I think it's about 8 or 9, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Oh, there you go. It goes there then, doesn't it? Definitely.
Yeah.
But either way, I think it's a great fight. I think, and yeah, it's a fight I fancy Cordina in. But I think either way, whatever Warrington does now, it's only big fights for him. He's not taking a risky fight without any reward, if it's world title or a massive financial gain. So he'll sit there, just wait to see what happens this Saturday. If Conlan wins and Lara beats Wood, which is sort of what I half expect to happen, then he's all big on Conlan. I think if promotionally he can do that, let's not forget that. And if Wood wins, it's him and Wood, definitely him and Wood. Regardless of what happens to Conlan, if Conlan wins and Wood wins, it's Warrington and Wood next.
Yeah. And the other thing is with the Wood Conlan fight is
in a field in the middle of it.
is that fight was so good that they could eventually do that kind of whenever, really, couldn't they? You'd imagine Wood Conlan. The first fight sells the rematch easily. Okay, the final fight that we're going to be previewing this weekend is Lawrence Okolie defending his WBO cruiserweight title against former gym mate, sparring partner, and indeed friend Chris Billam-Smith down in Bournemouth. Andy, going to come to you first. I quite enjoy, certainly before the fight, when you have a nice backstory like this, when you have, we were together and we were this and we were that, and then they get in the ring and the fact that they've sparred 300 and 500 rounds together makes it not the best of fights. However, that being said, are you looking forward to this weekend?
Yeah, I am. I'm looking forward to the whole week. I'm going down on Wednesday.
It's a good week in Bournemouth.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it in December. I wasn't there last summer, but I enjoyed it in December. It's something a bit different. The support for him down there is absolutely massive. Bournemouth's a nice little town. Everything's walking distance. It's got that atmosphere of a seaside town, which I always find kind of just interesting. It's just, it's not something I've experienced all that much. And I'm just hopeful that it's going to be a good fight, because there are quite a lot of things that might point towards it not being, that they know each other too well in terms of their styles, possibly. I would quite like to see it get a little bit spikier during the week. I'm not talking about anything manufactured, but if I'm Lawrence Okolie, I might be going down the route of a bit of a siege mentality route. If I'm his trainer, Sugar Hill, I might be trying to push that a little bit as well, because he had the fight against David Light. It wasn't a very good watch. He's been criticised for not being good to watch for a long time, and I think he felt the pressure off the back of that to jump into this fight a few weeks later, basically, and solve a real problem for Sky with these cruiserweights, because they wanted to get Billam-Smith a world title fight. Goulamirian wasn't really playing ball, and it looked like that whole kind of plan wasn't going to work out. And then Okolie has kind of saved the day here. And I think you said it to him when you were on the Sky Pod with him. Maybe it was on air, maybe it was off, but I think you did say to him, didn't you? Look, listen, your honesty about your own performance is a bit too much. Yeah. Stop it. And if I were him, I would be thinking to myself, and which is where I'd be going with it personally. I'd be thinking to myself, I've done everybody a favour by taking this fight, but let's be honest, they kind of pushed me into this. They criticised me. They signed me back again for a lot of money, Boxer and Sky. But do they really want me? They want Billam-Smith to beat me because he's the gentleman and everybody loves him. Nobody likes me. Nobody watches me. And I go into the week with that chip on my shoulder thinking, I'm going to shut everybody up here. I'm going to get in front of those 15,000 people and I'm going to mercilessly chin your local hero. And then I'm going to turn around and give it to Ben Shalom. That's how I would be.
All fire from Andy Clark.
Yeah, no,
Andy Clark PR now available for any fighters.
If I was Lawrence Okolie, if I was in the Okolie team and the Okolie business, that is what I would be trying to push him towards because he's a world champion. He's undefeated. No one has even come remotely close to beating him. Yeah. How dare you? That's what I'd be doing with it.
Barry, you mentioned there about saying that Lawrence Okolie was too honest potentially about his performance against David Light. What did you mean by that?
No, too honest, boys. No, he's crazily honest about how he is. He knows who he is. And one thing about that kid, he knows who he is, what he is. He knows he's hard to beat. He also knows that he's not always great to watch. He understands it. But it's almost so like, but I am what I am. This is what I do. And this is what makes me effective. I think he can be better than what he is, but you got to be careful not to change him dramatically. I'm just saying, like, let people criticise you. Don't criticise yourself. He's doing what I would do. Oh, I'm good, but I'm not that good. Let people do that for you. Let us do that.
There've been plenty of people who are going to do that.
Let Twitter do that. You just keep saying I'm this and this and this because not fake it till you make it. He's made it. He's not faking it either. But that sort of feeling. Just keep telling people you're the best because at the minute he is the best cruiserweight on the planet. At the minute, Apatai's maybe got the best win. He has got the best win, hasn't he, against Bradis? But it's Okolie just looks really hard to beat. I don't know. We want to see him take a really big, thunderous shot and see how that happens. And I think Billam-Smith, stylistically, is going to try and do that. But I also think that ultimately is going to be what's going to be the downfall for Billam-Smith. He's going to try and win. Sounds crazy, isn't it? His undoing will be trying to win the fight. But I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
It will be the way that he's going to try and win, isn't it? Because he likes to get on the inside, Chris, and he knows that in the past when people have tried that, Okolie has got hold of them, thrown them around the ring for 12 rounds. It's not been great to watch, but it's basically been impossible to get the better of. But he's going to...
But I see Okolie gives you opportunities because he paused with that jab. That left-handed Okolie should be fast and he should
so
be,
frustrating.
He should be turning the front foot inwards when he throws it. So he gets some... So he haven't got to step... Because he's such long, he doesn't have to step into the shot. Because if he steps into the shot the way his technique is, he will get the distance right. He'll punch over your head all the time. So he doesn't... He got the range... Let them walk onto the shot. So when you throw the jab, rather than step like I would tell other people to do, he just turns that front foot like a Tommy Hearns used to do and turn with it like that. Bam! And that'll be loads, and it's a solid shot. And let people walk onto it. Let them walk. And every time someone walks, you can even take a step back with the back foot and do the same thing. Boom! And so it's not a jab. It's a ramrod left hand. It's just like a massive piece of wood attached to your chest, and then just let people walk onto it all the time. What are you doing? Boom, 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 and them do the work for you. I think that he has no judgment of his range. Okolie, he doesn't know what his range is. His arms are too long for his body, so that's what it feels like. Yeah. So when he throws his shots, he doesn't know where they are.
He doesn't really stay still, does he?
He has chilling power, but he doesn't hit the target clean enough often enough. Though he does knock almost everybody out, but. I mean, it could be more impressive. That's what I'm saying. They can be much more impressive. And someone like Billam-Smith is sort of made for him, I feel. What Chris Billam-Smith has to do is go up and down with the jab constantly like that. But it ends up with Billam-Smith going low and throwing over the top. That's what's got to be what he's trying to do. You got to try and go low, slide in really tight with that front foot, and then swing over the top because Okolie does this. Always does this, Okolie. Now he tries to tie you up, and you got to get so low that he can't tie you up. Yeah, you almost got to go like Naz low, below the waist low, and then you got to swing over the top of that right hand and hope he can't take a shot. And then somehow, I'm going to say it, pivot. You got to get out. You got to get out to there before he ties you up and holds you and leans all over you. You got to get out to there, and then go again. constantly. The pressure's got to be immense, but there's a risk you're going to walk into a shot that's going to knock you out. And I think you've got to do it from round one. Don't let Okolie get into a rhythm. Please, for spectators' point of view, don't let Okolie get into a rhythm, because he can be a spoiler. That's what works for him. So he's effective. Because he thinks he can just spoil it, and then catch you and put you to sleep.
I interviewed him after I think it was the Askin fight. I can't remember whether it was Chamberlain then Askin, or it was Chamberlain, I think it was Watkins maybe, and then Askin. But he'd had 2 pretty bad fights in the space of 3 or 4 fights. I remember saying to him afterwards, because he said, while he was with Anthony Joshua, that AJ had said, this is the entertainment business. And he was probably saying that because it was on the Povetkin undercard when the Askin fight happened. And I said to him, how does that change your mentality moving forward? He said, look, I'll be honest, I'd love to go in there, and this is probably what you were alluding to earlier, I'd love to go in there, win by stoppage, look great, everyone loves it, but when push comes to shove, this is about winning, and I'm there to win the fight. And if I have to win the fight by jab and grab, and people don't like it, but ultimately I'm going to win and stay unbeaten and keep my world title, he wasn't world champion at that point, then that's what I'm going to do. And you kind of look at it and you think, you can sort of understand that. Early in the fight there, which is where we're going to come on to next, what does each man need to do? You're going to have Chris Billam-Smith there in front of a raucous crowd, the biggest non-football event in the history of Bournemouth. We're going to be singing his name and cheering. Sure? Apparently so. I'm just going on what Boxer are saying. PR mouthpiece for promoters nowadays. I
read about you in the Boxing News. Boxing News is a good magazine.
Big up Boxing News. Buy your Boxing News magazine. Get your subscription. What does Lawrence Okolie need to do early on to take the crowd out of the equation? And on the flip side, what does Chris Billam-Smith have to do, and what can he not afford to do early on?
I think I've said it. Well, I think the one is about how the jab works for Okolie. I think a solid jab is what he just has to do in this fight, but he has to do in every fight. I think. No, I think this would tell us a lot how good Sugar Hill is for me, because he's got a guy here in Okolie who I thought was working well with Shane McGuigan. He has to just work behind a solid jab. But I think for Sugar Hill, he's got a guy who's got all the attributes, all the tools to be a really good fighter. I mean, a more effective fighter than he is. And all the praise that Sugar Hill got from the Tyson Fury change of his style or whatever, well, he should be able to do that with this fella now. And if he can't, then I would question, don't dog him out here, I would question his ability of this maverick trainer that I've been saying he is. I'm sure he is. I'm not slagging him off, but I think I see what Okolie has to do, and it does for me. And I'm not a trainer at all, and I don't want to train him, by the way. I'm not trying to get a job here, but I don't think it takes a lot of adjustment. But a lot of things are mental for fighters. You can see what they can do, and you can see how they could do it quite easily, but they can't get out of their head what they're doing.
But that is coaching, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the ability to get them to do it, because he's got, like you say, he's got a guy who has got those pure cronk raw materials, which is long levers and the ability to really punch. And there was a bit of footage they released before that David Light fight where people were making fun of it a little bit, where Okolie's just standing with his feet absolutely still, touching the pad and then smashing it with his right hand. And people were saying, well, what's the point of that? And they're just saying, well, he's just trying to get him to kind of... But this is what he needs to get him to be able to do, which is just work out what his distance is and punch hard.
But I think, all this touching with the jab, I hate the word touching. I use it as well. I can't stand it. This touching with the jab. What's the point? But when you're 6'6" or whatever he is, and you've got real crazy power, which he has, don't touch him with anything. Hit him with everything you hit him.
The jab for Okolie is the most frustrating thing.
He can knock you out with the jab. If he can knock you out, you can see what I'm saying about you don't have to bring your feet forward, because you've got such long levers. If you hit him with that jab, it's going to push him back enough. All you got to do is turn from the hips and the shoulders and have that movement like that. Use all your core strength, using all the muscle in the back of your body. You're still pushing off the back foot. But you don't have to take that step with the front foot like fighters have to do. You go, bam, let him walk onto it. And once you've touched him there, you've pushed him back because you're so powerful. He's in range for that right hand. You're still going 6 inches past his head, which is what you want to do, according to Bruce Lee. But no, and you go bam and bam, and you go all the way through. Then you hit him with the perfect shot, and you've literally barely all you've done is rock back and forth from your front foot to your back foot. You've kept your balance, and because I think Okolie, he has a very safety. I think his mentality is very safety first.
Yeah,
and that's fine. You are what you are.
But I think that's the biggest problem for the trainer, is to get him out of that and past that.
No, I don't think you need to though. I don't know. I think doing that, what I'm just saying, keeps you safety first. You're safer.
But you have to convince him of that. I think. But if
you're saying if you're trying to get him to step behind the jab and trying to get him to pile forward, then he's thinking, I'm getting close to the target here, because he's starting to bend his punches and loop them over the top, and all the things he does, try and throw uppercuts, like all those stuff inside. You want to learn that, but you want to learn that enough just to survive. I think he needs to learn to throw a 1-2 properly without giving anything away. But
I totally agree. But the problem is that you've got to get him to do it on fight night and experience it before he believes it, because it doesn't matter him doing it in sparring. And then on the night, what we see a lot, obviously, is that he doesn't really do it, and he thinks, actually, you know what, I can just win this doing what I've always done. And that's his power is his poison, isn't it? Because, you know, he will get on the inside with someone, have a little bit of a wrestle, and just think, I'll just do this again then, because, you know, I can beat him doing this. But I would just like to see him be, you know, just be a bit spiteful, a bit bad-tempered, a bit belligerent during fight week. It doesn't mean that you're over-emotional or anything like that, but I would just like to see him say, listen, you know, I'm sick of everybody talking about how I'm rubbish to watch and all the rest of it. If I'm so shit, why don't one of you just come and beat me then? How about that? You know,
people are not saying he's rubbish. People are saying he's rubbish to wash. To wash, you can't wash. He's rubbish to watch, and that's the difference. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
But I think, he gets a rhythm to his work, and usually I quite like that, the little bounce he gets. But I think it takes away what he can do. Now he does that bounce. That's Billam-Smith's opportunity to get on him. You follow that bounce. Billam-Smith needs to get low, follow that bounce, and then when he bounces back, you go really fast for your feet. Close him in quick, and even if you can, try moving that head when you're coming forward, like that. You know, like what we learn in the army. I've never been to the army. In Scouts, dodging bullets. No, but literally
dodging bullets in the Scouts.
Dodging bullets, yeah.
In Wales, in Cardiff, you do
crazy.
probably.
But I mean, literally, you and try and sort of get him really fast. It's going to take lots of energy, but to get in close, boom, boom, up and down with the jab, certainly. But when he gets that bounce, because you can't just go in, because he'll just, when he bounces back, he'll come back with the right hand. But if you can just get on him really quick, follow him back out really fast, get your feet really fast, and get to him quick, and then do that, boom, boom, throw over the top so you're close. Make sure that front foot gets right in between his stance, and really, really reach over the top with that right hand. Get so low that he can't hit you back. And he can't hold you. All he can do is lean on top of you. And then you throw that right hand, and then you got to pivot out, and then you go right at him again. And then he will hold you. Because I think with Okolie, he could grab you anywhere.
Yeah.
With those arms, you got
from across the ring.
Yeah, he goes in there with 2 arms, and then when the fight starts, he got like 16 arms.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the fact that they know each other really, really well, I think it'll help. You know, I think a lot of people are seeing it a bit differently, but I think that previously Okolie's had opponents who they've heard all about his strength and how he's impossible to get hold of on the inside, and he'll wrap you up and he'll throw you around, and they think to themselves, I'm pretty strong too. I know that even Garby thought exactly that before their fight, and then 30 seconds in discovered that he was wrong about that. Billam-Smith will know. He will know after 300 rounds that he can't do that, or he will lose. And Shane McGuigan will know. Whereas I think others have thought, you know, all right, he hasn't had a wrestle with me. You know, An elite level sportsman, they're like that, because they can't think, right, well, I can't do that because I'll definitely lose if I do that. The mentality is, well, he hasn't fought me yet. But they've shed so many rounds that Chris will know that he cannot do that.
The worry is for Chris, because he'll know the power, and he'll know the mistakes that Okolie makes, and but he also knows his power, that he's too tentative, and those rounds go by when nothing's happening, and then everyone starts to panic, and who makes the first mistake, and you can't make a mistake with Okolie. That's a problem, because he does have that power, but. I haven't seen Okolie get hit with a great shot yet.
We were talking about this. I think we talked about this on a podcast. I think the only shot that I've seen him really take, he got hit by Wadi Camacho.
Yeah.
And that wasn't I mean, a decent shot from Wadi.
Wadi could punch.
Yeah, could punch. Yeah. But it was also a later sort of Wadi. It wasn't necessarily the earlier version of him. But other than that, I can't really think of any. I can't really think of any instances where he's been hit. You mentioned it there, and I want to move on to this section of it, because I do feel like obviously it is the biggest part of the of the promotion, I guess, is the fact that they are ex-gym mates and they have sparred between 300 and 500 rounds together. And, it wasn't that long ago that Shane McGuigan was training Lawrence Okolie. Barry, going to come to you as our resident former world champion. Who does that favour? How big of a factor is it? And ultimately, how do you think it impacts, if at all, this weekend?
It favours Billam-Smith because a part of, as Andy already not alluded to, he's blatantly said, that's part of Okolie's strength. It's his awkwardness. You don't know. You think, you're watching. Like, I'm looking at the stuff I'm saying, how to beat him. It sounds great, doesn't it? Do this, do this, do that. But then when you get in there with him, that being 6'7", but having a reach of 7'5", which he's got, is also, it's, hang on, I didn't think you'd hit me from here. Oh, he's stronger than what I thought he is. He hits hard, or he ties me up, or his feet are weird, he's all gangly, I can't get hold of him, and it's all different. But Billam-Smith so that's part of his strength. That's not, he makes that work for him. But Billam-Smith will know that better than anyone else. So the adjustments he'll have to make in fight will be, maybe he won't have to make any. He will know going in what he has to do already. He'll know that when I think I'm safe, I give myself an extra 2 inches because I'm not quite safe, but actually I got to go an extra 5 inches back because I know I'm not safe. I got to be stood the other side of the ring so he can't hit me. And when I come in, and he'll know there's certain blind spots that Okolie has, and he has plenty of those, by the way. But he'll know exactly where he feels uncomfortable, what he doesn't like. Where Okolie, because he's always been the dominant, I would imagine he's always the dominant force in the gym. He's always been a step ahead of Billam-Smith in careers and probably and success. That he hadn't had to really study Smith as much as, because he just thinks when sparring's getting hard, I'll just put a bit more power in the shots. Probably, I would say.
Did you ever box anybody that you did any kind of...
Yeah, as a schoolboy, I did. Not school, as my first senior fight. Yeah, I boxed a kid who, actually, cause it's a funny story, because my trainer wasn't a very nice bloke, my amateur trainer, and me and this kid were doing an exhibition he was a couple of years older than me, he was a man, I was a boy, and we were doing an exhibition, but it wasn't, and he said we're going to do an exhibition, but we're not doing an exhibition, they're going to announce it as a fight, but it's an exhibition. But it wasn't, it was a real fight. And my trainer was in his corner because he was 2 years older than me, and my dad had to go in my corner. And after the first round, we're all tapping each other. We both thought it was an exhibition. And the referee said, if you don't start fighting, I'm going to chuck you out. So then he came out in our round, tried to knock me out, and I dropped him with a body shot and stopped him. But and I had to go, but we had to drive home together. So it's mad, yeah. That's the strength of the people. But that's my trainer's fault. It's disgusting. But what I mean, but I knew him, because I was technically better than him. And even though he was a man and he hit harder than me, he was stronger than me, but I was technically much better. So I knew the mistakes he made. So when I realised it was a fight and he realised it was a fight and he attacked me first, he tried to win the fight before I did. Then I just seen the mistakes. I knew he lifted his elbow every time he threw a shot. He used to throw it out. He used to go like that. So I was a good body puncher back then, ironically. So I didn't know exactly what to do. Whereas he wouldn't be studying me like that. He was always some people just focus on what they have to do. That's why I'd say, I can't see Okolie loses, I've got to be honest, but I mean, Billam-Smith will study Okolie more than Okolie studies him, because I think he probably thinks better than Okolie, and Okolie just got more sort of backward to what I've said about. But Okolie is always the dominant force there. You won't have to worry about him. You won't be looking at what he does, and he makes small mistakes from Okolie, but he gets away with it because of his reach and size and awkwardness. But Billam-Smith will know every mistake he makes, and Shane McGuigan will certainly know. Because when you take someone on the pads, as you know, like you have a better understanding of boxing now, taking people on the pads, and you watching it.
Yeah, definitely.
When you see it yourself, and actually as a fighter, I've taken people on the pads, and I've thought, I should have done that now. I think I would say to any boxer, take people on the pads, help out your trainers and your coaches, whether you're an amateur or pro, help out. It will make you a better fighter. Actually, that's. Everyone should do that. Every coach should have their boxer help train the fighters who are not as good. It makes you a better fighter. You see things much better when you're on the other end, ironically. There you go. Free advice there for you kids.
It's always good to have you back.
Since on boxing, free and nice. Only on boxing news.
There we go.
And my new column, How to Box.
Speak to Matt.
How to Suck by Barry.
Anyway, right, okay, we have come to the part of each preview show that we all love to make ourselves look foolish. It's prediction time. So Andy, we're going to go to you first. Lopez Conlan, I'm trying to get all in the right way. Lopez Conlan, Lara Wood 2, Okolie Billam-Smith.
Lopez Conlan, I'm going to go Conlan points. I've always fancied him in this one, and I think it's going to be the night. Coronation in Belfast, all that kind of thing. Although I'm not sure if that's a phrase that he would
No,
take
maybe not
kindly
like
to. I'd say probably not. But yeah, he's going to become a world champion Belfast on Saturday. I believe that. Unfortunately, I think that the second fight between Lara and Wood will go the same way as the first one. I think that he'll get caught, Leigh Wood, unfortunately, and get stopped. I'd love it if it turned out differently. I'd love to be wrong, but I think that's what's going to happen. And as for Bournemouth,
Oh, here we go.
I'm going to go against my normal rules, which is to kind of be completely rational and logical about it. Because I just think that sometimes you get a situation where everything does just come together for that one night. And I don't mean by that this will be the only big night that he'll have, but sometimes the fairy tale does happen. I think his career has been moved well, Billam-Smith. I think he's a great success story in terms of he's just stepped up level by level by level. And a bit like watching Josh Warrington beat Lee Selby at Ellen Road in a fight that people didn't think he would win. He was 7-2 that night. I remember the odds because I was on him and I won some money. I've just got a gut feeling, which I normally ignore, that it's going to happen for Billam-Smith on Saturday. I'm not absolutely sure how it's going to happen, but I just think it is. So I'm picking Billam-Smith to win points.
You're a romantic at heart, aren't you?
I'm really not, and that's the that makes it quite
safeguard
unusual.
you there from the Eubank Junior.
That makes it quite unusual for me to make that choice. But I've just thought for a while that you listen to Billam-Smith and he's a sensible guy. I think he will perform on the night. I don't think it will be too much for him. I think it might take him to another level. I think that's what we could see.
Barry Jones, over to you.
Yeah, pretty well. First two fights I'm with you.
I
think the third was going to be a draw. No, yeah, I think Conlan. I think he's going to box. I think the concentration will be there. I think he'll box really well. He'll be smart. He won't make any mistakes. I think that's the important part. Because of his technical brilliance, he won't make any mistakes, and he won't try too hard to get a stoppage. He'll just box him by numbers pretty much. And I think he dances a merry tune to a world title. I think Wood and Lara's goes the same way. Wood will box well. He'll be competitive. He might even be winning the fight, but at some point he's going to get chinned. Whether he goes for it early and tries to dine out and tries to get Lara out there quick, he gets caught. Or if he tries to box like he did the last time and box really well, he still gets caught. And in the Bournemouth fight there, I think Billam-Smith will give it 100%. He will go for it. He will throw. He's on a crest of a wave for confidence-wise, and he will be in the fight. And I think he will pose questions for Okolie. But I think ultimately, him trying to win the fight, go all out and win the fight with that crowd behind him, will spur him on to do more than maybe he could. But he'll get caught. At some point, you get caught. I think when he gets caught, I think he'll unravel. There's no shame in that because Okolie has that chilling power, but I do think at some point him trying to win the fight as much as I think he will be ultimately be his undoing.
Okolie late stoppage ish.
Anywhere from the first bell to the last bell. No, that's Okolie, isn't it? Yeah, no, I do think I got a feeling it's going to be sort of early to mid rounds. I think Billam's going to try and start as fast as he can. If he's too cautious, then he might start losing rounds. And I don't think you want to do that. I don't think you want to get. They don't want to get Okolie into a rhythm or a pattern. God forbid, none of us want him in a rhythm or a pattern because it won't be a good watch. But I think you put it on him straight away. I think you want to make him really, really be uncomfortable from the offset. And with that, though, I think at some point he will get caught. He'll either stand up too high, get caught coming out, or something will happen. And Okolie doesn't need to hit you on the butt. He needs to hit you anywhere.
Yeah.
From the shoulders up, if he hits you, you're done.
Yeah, I think I do think that's the sensible percentage call, and if I turn out to be right, then I will accept no credit for it because my prediction is not logic based, which is what I usually like to base everything on.
Anyway, you'll be commentating on the fight.
Yeah,
You know what
no,
I mean?
that's
Like,
true. That's true. That's
so
true.
she's-
But I don't care who wins.
No.
You know, it's nothing to do with me, and I genuinely don't. I like them both. It wouldn't matter if I hated them both.
Do you know what? I like them both actually. I met Okolie for the first time, and I didn't
Yeah.
think he was a likable guy. I didn't know why
No,
I
he
thought
is.
that.
No,
He's a really likable man, and
Yeah.
obviously Chris obviously looks like a likable guy, and he is like a likable guy. What's your prediction, mate?
Is there a rematch clause? By
There
the
you go,
way,
see?
has Okolie got a rematch clause? So if Okolie loses, there'll be a rematch.
There is a rematch clause.
So an absolute barnstormer that Billam-Smith wins. That's what
There's
Sky
no
wants.
contractual. Yeah, well, there would be. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
in that situation, yeah.
A brilliant fight that Billam-Smith wins, and
And then you could do,
that's
both
from a
picking
business
themselves up
point
off
of
the
view.
floor.
If you want to think about it in those terms, which we don't, but that would be ideal, really.
Come on, Tebbert. Sorry, I get confused. Give us your prediction, son.
I know both guys well, and as people like you keep reiterating, there is this misconception that I go to sleep in Shane McGuigan pyjamas every night, which can also lead me to issues with people who are fighting Shane McGuigan trained fighters.
And right, so they should have. By the
No,
way.
they shouldn't, because I have a very good relationship with Lawrence. And I have a very good relationship with Chris, so I'm going to sit that one out. Usually,
No.
Usually, I give
Hang on
my
a second.
absolute.
Hang on a
Listen,
second.
it's my-
Integrity down the drain.
It's
no
my
good.
podcast. I do what
This
I want.
is no good. You make me give a prediction.
This is Rob's integrity. There you go.
So I didn't have that much anyway.
No, listen, no, you've got to give a
dear
prediction.
me.
It doesn't matter. I give a prediction to people who I like and dislike all the time.
I've just given one.
It's not, they don't take it personal.
So usually I can
Boxers don't take things personal.
sometimes
You're
I
an
can
absolute
worm my way
flake.
out. I can
Absolute
worm my way out
flake.
of doing the
Flake.
predictions because I can just go, okay, that's it, great,
You
very well.
listen.
You're going to say
But he's been
Billam-Smith
waiting
points to
for it.
Okolie by knockout.
No. You're full of No, hang on a minute. You're full of yourself, you are. You're all about you lately. You're like the new media, you are. Like the boxing did a thing on this, and you're one of them now. Like you're all I'm the story. You're all about yourself, nicking work off people like me. You are. You got your
Barry,
prediction show.
Believe me, our jobs are very different.
What's that?
Our jobs are very different.
I don't like in my opinion. You just like sit around. You do asking questions. Give us you want to give a prediction? Give us your prediction.
My prediction
on all three fights, please.
My predictions on all three fights are. So Wood, Lara Wood. I've fucking done it again. I almost keep calling you Barry as well. I'm having a bit of a strange day. Lara Wood 2. I think Lara wins by stoppage in the middle rounds in a very similar fight. Lopez Conlan again. I almost call it Conlan Lopez. I think Conlan wins, but I do feel like he's going to have to weather some.
It'd be a rough ride.
Yeah, I do think he's going to have
could well
some
be.
issues. I don't think he's just going to sort of dance his way to a decision win. Okolie, Chris Billam-Smith. I'm going to go for Okolie points.
Yeah, that's
Okolie in a not good fight.
Listen,
fight.
absolutely.
That could definitely happen.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a very good fight.
Absolutely no one attached to anything with any sense or rationality about them could take any offence at that kind of prediction. And I know what you're saying. It's different for me because I'll go and see fighters in the gym and I'll see them during fight week, but I generally speaking don't really. Well, we talk about this quite a bit. Generally speaking, I'm friendly, but I don't really want to be anyone's mate. Whereas when you're doing your job, it's different. You do have to form relationships with people, and people can take things the wrong way. It doesn't matter to me if they take them the wrong way, and that's not just because I'm that kind of a bloke, but just because in the job I do, it doesn't matter to me.
I don't usually mind. I'll usually give a prediction, but in an awkward position as this weekend be, because I had it. Do you know what? I had it with Lawrence at the press conference, and I'm happy to sort of say it now because I don't think he'll care. But I had it when I was there, when I'd sort of turned up and I went, "Oh, was it awkward today?" Lawrence said, "It wasn't for me. Was it awkward for you?" And I went, "Yeah, a little bit." And then now this is really awkward. But no, I do. I always, I think. It's fair to say, try and keep out of my job.
Funnily enough, I think Okolie's one of these lads who what's always really impressed me about him is that he doesn't take things personally. But
I'll change it to Chris Billam-Smith by first round stoppage then in that case.
He doesn't take things personally, but I would just like him to start taking
it.
Yeah, but I would just like him to start taking it a bit more personally.
Yeah, fair enough. I think we all pretty much give a pretty fair and unbiased opinion on here. And we've had instances in the past. We've all had them independent of each other where you give a prediction and somebody doesn't necessarily like it. I don't, by the way, envision me giving a prediction on that fight for anybody to care one way or the other. I would have just preferred 1 week to sit that one out.
Let me take this over.
We're never going to let you do that.
Listen,
We're never going to let you do that.
Rob loves you both equally. He loves you. He's wearing all
I
your
don't
clothes.
love anybody.
All your clothes after you've worn them as well, to bed or not to bed. and he'll take your dogs for a walk or whatever, or he'll babysit your kids, or he'll do anything for you. He loves you with all his heart. Right, so what he says is not personal. Please don't beat him up, and can he come around your house and interview next week? How's that?
It's been great to have you back, Barry. Right. That's all from us, thankfully, on this week's edition of the boxing show. The boxing show. Let us know who you think is a boxing show. I've become Johnny Fisher because I've had.
I'm sorry this is finishing, The last 10 minutes has been ace, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Seeing you sweat. The first time I've seen you sweat, not eating food.
I was going to say, sweat walking up the stairs, Barry. Thanks for everybody for stopping by, apart from Barry Jones, and enjoying this week's edition of The Boxing Show. Let us know who you think is going to be victorious for this weekend's trio of world title fights in the UK. From me, Rob Tebbett, from him, and from Mr. Andy Clark, thanks very much for stopping by, and we'll catch up with you next time.